Sky This Month with your host, Dave McDonald.
Welcome to the Sky This Month. I'm your host, Dave McDonald, and this is November 2022. And what a great month we have for you. There's all kinds of planets and constellations. In a moment, I'm going to be introducing to you a couple of our guests from Belmont High School Astronomy Club, where you have entered a worldwide competition to name a star and its exoplanet. We're going to be talking about that. November, it hosts the Leonid Meteor Shower. What an exciting shower. It is one of the premier showers of the year. And I'm going to tell you all about meteors, about this particular shower, and when and where and how you can view it. So first, just talking about some of the planets. Jupiter, blazing, you can't miss it in the southern sky during the month. It's the brightest object in the sky at night, unless the moon is in the area, which from time to time it is. It's blazing at a magnitude negative 2.8 and is spanning a disk of 47 inches of arc through a telescope. And that's going to wane a little bit to about 45 seconds of arc as the month goes on. But it is huge. Jupiter's disk through a telescope is larger than Saturn with its rings. Saturn is boasting 37 inches of arc and is shining at a magnitude of 0.5, and towards the end of November will be shining at a magnitude of about 0.6. So still very bright, one of the brightest objects in the sky, but nowhere near where we're talking. Jupiter is about 12 times brighter than Saturn. And then Mars. Mars is so awesome. Do you want to know something? The end of the month, November 30th, Mars is going to be closer to Earth than it will be all year and for a couple of years. And so it's going to be bigger in a telescope. It's starting the month off at 15 inches of arc, and it's going to grow to 17 inches of arc, and it's going to be growing to a magnitude 1.8. You know Sirius? Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky at a magnitude negative 1.42. Mars is going to outshine Sirius at a magnitude negative 1.8. And I'll show you towards the end of the show how to find Mars and the neat red triangle that exists with Mars, Aldebaran, and Betelgeuse. It's neat things to show you. So stay tuned throughout the whole show, and we'll introduce you to the night sky and the planets, where to find them, and the constellations, and talk about exactly where and how to view the meteor shower. But right now, we want to chat about this neat contest that the Belmont High School Astronomy Club is involved with. And I want to introduce to you a couple of the officers. So Tyler Flanagan is the president of the club, so welcome to the show. Reese is our illustrious treasurer of the show, and so welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So it's great having you guys here. Okay, so we'll look at some of the photos that we have here. So starting off, you can see naming exoplanet HIP 65426b by the Belmont High School Astronomy Club. So Tyler, go ahead. Take it away.
So this is our competition. It's Name Exo Worlds 2022.
So our planet, HIP 65426b, has a mass of 3,000 times the size of our Earth, but it's only 17 times larger, making it the most dense exoplanet. It's around 92 AUs from a star, and an AU is the distance from our Earth to our Sun, and Pluto is roughly 40 AUs away from our star, so it is far away from a star, so it's most likely very cold. It is a balloon main sequence, and it is the largest of the bunch in the contest. It lies in the lower right constellation of the Centaurus. So Centaurus is here, and our star would be right down. Star and planet would be right down here. Our star is HIP 65426. It's 14 million years old, which is relatively young for a star and a planet. It has no disk of dust like some other stars have, and this is usually present on young stars. Our theory is that it consumed a planet, and that's why it rotates at 150 times faster than our own star, which is insanely fast for a star. It has a dusty atmosphere, and it is the first exoplanet and exostar directly observed by the James Webb Space Telescope.
So this is the first name scheme we have, the Chimera. This is our first idea. This was presented by Dr. Jordan. Our basis is the odd theorized origins of why it's so strange, was mentioned before, but it is in the Centaurus system, so that fits the Chimera scheme, and that brings us to what Chimera, and that would be the Minotaur, which is one of the most famous of these, which is Greek, lived at the center of the labyrinth, just like the star in the center of its system, and it was mean and ferocious, just like, you know, how fast a star spins, so swiftly and fast, and it would consume humans like with how theorized it would consume other planets, which may be a gas giant, we don't know though. And then this would go along with our theme as well, which is the Chimera. You have just the Lamassu for the planet, yet another Chimera from history. She was a protective deity who would be depicted in statues outside of cities, which would guard the labyrinth and the Minotaur. And then as for other planets, we can go to the theme to pick our chimeras from history, like the Sphinx or the Satyr.
Our second naming scheme was the United Worlds of Babe, presented by David Petrell. We thought, because it was such a young planet, and Babe and Bunyan are such a young American folktale, that it was fitting. Babe is surprisingly bigger of the two, and he's a nice shade of blue. Due to our star being a blue main sequence, it's only natural for us to choose Babe as the match for our star. And then the large man himself, Bunyan, he fits the role of our large super Jupiter, and he may not be the star of the show, but he still plays a major part. The rest of the planets, when it comes time, we have other American folklore such as Pecos Bill, the greatest cowboy to ever live, Joe Magarac, Pittsburgh's Man of Steel, Alfred Boltop, Stormalong, and a 30-foot tall sea captain, along with many others.
So our winner, which we did a vote for amongst our astronomy club, is the Babe, Oxen Bunyan. What's more appropriate than such giant worlds in these two legends? Therefore, we'd like to name HIP 65426B Bunyan after the legendary lumberjack himself, and appropriately would be his partner in crime, the Big Blue Star, and Ox 65426. And yeah, this is presented by David J. Petrell, Dr. Andrew Jordan, our Belmont High School Astronomy Club, and Mr. McDonald.
All right, well, it's great. So the next steps are, we've done our presentation, we've made our choices, and now we need to write a 300-word essay.
Yes. And then we wait.
And we got to make a video.
Oh,
right.
Yep, video.
And so maybe next month or in January, we'll show you folks at home the video. It's only going to be 3 minutes. I think that's the limit for the video. So the thing is, it's amazing to think about this, that there's only one winner per country. They've got all those stars to name, so several countries will be involved. But for the United States, we're in it to win it.
Yes, we are.
And I think that was our main deciding factor on who was winning, because American folklore and rooting for our own country here.
Exactly.
Culture.
American folklore, American culture, perfect. And like you said earlier, a relatively young folklore story
Yeah.
for a relatively
Young
young
star.
star planetary system. Great. Well, Reese, thanks so much for
Thank you,
being
Mr.
with us.
McDonald.
And thank you,
Thank you,
Tyler.
Mr. McDonald.
Appreciate your
I enjoyed
being
being
with
here.
us, and I'm glad
Appreciate
that
you having us.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, next we have the Leonid meteor shower to talk about. Can you imagine that? So the Leonid meteor shower is going to be this month, obviously, November 17th and 18th. So we're talking about the late night of the 17th to early morning of the 18th. But it's important to note that a few days before, a few days after, it could still be really good. As a matter of fact, I've been doing some reading about this year's storm. It's actually not going to be a storm, but it may be dazzling because there is a certain pocket of material that Earth is going to be moving through that has some unknowns to it. So you may find that the day or two before the 17th may be a really good night to go out, or early morning to go out, or it could be like November 19th may be a really good night to go out. So whatever is clear and whatever you're willing to get up for may be worthwhile. And severe meteor hunters will probably be up for like 6 nights, 6 mornings, checking it all out. So what are meteors anyway? Are they falling stars? Are they shooting stars? No. They're really small grains of dust and debris from the early stages of our solar system's development, and a lot of them are comet dust and debris. For example, you remember last month we talked about the Orionids and Halley's Comet. So if you got to see any Orionid meteors last month, you were looking at the dust and debris left from Halley's Comet. The word meteor comes from the Greek word meteoron, which means phenomenon in the sky. And who doesn't love a good meteor shower? Particularly every now and again you see one of those really bright fireballs. And the Leonids are known to have some of those. So that's really kind of cool. So here's a few other names just to help your vocabulary. Meteoroids are dust and debris floating around our solar system. Meteors are the meteoroids that have collided with our atmosphere and they burn up. And the meteorites are the meteoroids that are big enough to make it through the atmosphere and land on Earth somewhere. An interesting fact to note that in New Hampshire, there have been no meteorites ever found in New Hampshire. There have been people who think they found a meteorite, but testing and such turns out, no, it's not a meteorite, it's a meteoron. See what I did there? The meteor dynamo. Why can't I see them all the way down here? They're happening up there, but they're coming, even though they're relatively small, like I said, about a grain of sand, and something the size of a pea is going to give you this really big fireball effect. But they're going so fast, from 25,000 to 165,000, 160,000 miles an hour. So even though they're small, when they hit the atmosphere, it creates this ramjet of pressure and a flash of energy. So you can see in this little illustration that's going on, as they enter about 60 miles high, which is kind of considered the borderline of space, 60, 62 miles up, and down to 5 miles or so above the Earth, you find the maximum effect. And so here's some pictures. What do you think about these? So you can see actual photos of meteors. And if you look at the top right photo here, you can see it looks like they're all coming from a place that I'm circling with my red dot here. It looks like they're all coming from that. And that point is called the radiant. And I'm going to show you a little bit later where the radiant is for the Leonid meteor shower. And obviously the name Leonids comes from the constellation Leo. Leo the lion is where the meteors appear to be emanating from. Then I mentioned to you that the debris from a comet is what leaves the path for Earth to go through that creates the meteor shower. So you can see here, if you follow with my laser dot, Earth right here where this X is, that's where Earth ends up every November 17th or 18th or so. And then you have this orbit of the comet Tempel-Tuttle, which has gone through, and the last time it was through was 1997, but it left a trail of dust and debris. And so Earth goes through that trail of dust every year around November 17th to 18th or so, and every now and again, About every 33 years, Comet Tempel-Tuttle comes around again and comes closer to the sun and leaves another patch of material. So they've been tracing these patches of material that have been left over the past several passings of Comet Tempel-Tuttle, and have found that some of them are more tightly packed with dust than others. And they're saying that it's possible. There's no guarantees when it comes to meteors. Sometimes you may have an amazing, wow, look at all those meteors. And sometimes you think it's going to be a great show, and it's like, well, that was nothing. But we're hoping that this is really going to be a good, dazzling show. So this is the idea of the radiant. So you can see the constellation Leo, and that's what we call the sickle of Leo, which represents the lion's head. And pretty much right from the middle of the sickle, you see the big red dot, that is called the radiant, and that's where the meteors will appear to be. And Leo is one of the signs of the zodiac, and you can see to the right on your screen is the constellation Gemini. And a good constellation just to be able to help you find things is the well-known Orion. Orion is probably the second best constellation known after the asterism of the Big Dipper. So this is how we know that these are Leonids. So you see these red arrows. So you can see this one right here. And if you trace that line, that thin line backwards, it ends up in the middle of the sickle. And if you see this one with this red arrow, it's a little bright, it's the brightest one of the three here. But if you trace that backwards, it was streaming this way. But if you trace it backwards, it is though it came from the center of the sickle. And this faint one over here off to the right of your screen, you see this line here was shooting off to the right of your screen. But if you trace it backwards again, it ends up in the middle of the sickle of the lion's head. And so that's how you know those are genuine Leonid meteor showers left by Comet Tempel-Tuttle. So if you happen to see, for example, this night, if you watch my red laser dot and you see something go this way, that was not a Leonid. We call that a sporadic meteor because they happen all the time. There's a lot of dust and stuff up there that Earth passes through, and that other material interacts with the atmosphere of Earth and creates sporadic meteors. So this is a fisheye view of some meteors that are happening and a little bit of a time exposure, because it's difficult. You can't just go out at night with your camera and say, oh, there's a meteor, click, because I'm sure by the time you click and your phone decides it's going to get ready to take a picture, it's gone. So what we usually do with the camera, and you can do this with some cell phones, is leave the shutter open for a period of a minute, 2 minutes. If you have a camera, that you can leave the shutter open for 5 minutes or so, so that you will catch any meteors that happen to be flashing by. And I've done that before. And of course, I have the shutter open for 5 minutes facing this way, and there's 3 meteors behind my head. I turn the camera around, open the shutter for 5 more minutes, and the meteors are happening. It's tough. It's potluck, but it's a lot of fun when it works out and you get a nice picture of a good meteor. Above Earth, this is what it looks like. This is from the MSX satellite above Earth, and you can see these grains of sand, these particles interacting with the top of the atmosphere right here. It's a very cool shot taken by this satellite in the 1997 Leonid meteor shower. So how do you observe this? Remember, November 17th, late night, early morning, before dawn of November 18th, but a couple of 3 days on either side, dress warm, because you don't want to, because it's getting cold now. We had some really nice warm weather at the beginning of November, but it's getting chilly now. You don't want to be out in 15 minutes, 20 minutes go by and, hey, I'm cold, and go back inside. You're going to miss it. So be prepared, dress warm. Drink a lot of water-based fluids. Keep some cookies handy, some donuts, Boston cream donuts perhaps. Get a tarp, a sleeping bag. Lean back in your lawn chair. Get the lawn chairs out that you might have already put away. and enjoy yourself. Get your neighbors to turn their lights out and sit back and enjoy. And plan to stay out for a few hours. I've done that before with some friends for 2 or 3 hours, and it's just neat because your eyes adapt more and you see some of the fainter ones. And you can take a log of the event, like if you're a little familiar with constellations. I saw one go from north to northeast at a certain time, and it was really bright. If you're familiar with magnitude numbers, you can use those. And it may be worth your while, depending upon where you live, to get outside the city. Maybe you know where there might be a field or a place or a safe place on a road that you can pull over and get out and watch meteors, because it's definitely worth your while. So here's the complete meteor observer. You see, you've got your lawn chair, sleeping bag, nice pillow. You're out in the field. You've got your donuts and coffee, some Jolt perhaps. What's a field without some stray cows? Your camera is set up with the tripod looking up, and you're just ready to have a really good time. And in November, not so much worried about bugs. You know, Perseids in August, we got to worry about the bug spray, but probably not so much for the Leonids in November. So happy observing. Remember, late night, November 17th, early morning, before the sun comes up on November 18th. But again, check the weather, because 2 or 3 days before those dates, 2 or 3 days after those dates, and you really could strike it rich. So I'm going to show you now a little bit more about the radiant and what the night sky looks like, where you can find the meteors. I'm going to share with you a little bit about Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, where to find them and what constellations you can see in the night sky. Well, let me tell you a little bit about where the radiant of Leo is going to be in the context of the night sky. So this is early morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, November 18th. But again, a few days before, a few days after, same idea. But this is around 1 o'clock in the morning. So one of the things you notice quickly is, well, the moon's out, which it won't be in the same place because it moves from day to day about 13 degrees towards the east, each night. And it looks like it's a full moon there, but in reality, it is a waning third quarter moon. So it's less than half lit, and each successive night it's going to be less and less lit. So the moon is going to be a minimal problem. And then you can see right here is the sickle of Leo that we talked about. That's the head of the lion, where the radiant of the Leonids is located. And for reference, you see the constellation of Orion, which is a favorite constellation. You can see the 3 stars, Al-Natak, Al-Nalam, and Mintaka, which are the belt stars of Orion. So while you are looking for meteors, and you don't want to stare at the radiant. That's just where they're going to appear to come from. And even before the radiant rises, still late night of the 17th or any night, the important thing is for you to get out 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and look any direction they could be happening. So the next slide shows just some of the connecting lines of the constellations that you can see. So you can see down here, Leo, the back end of Leo, its hindquarters, and the star at the end of the triangle is called Denobla. That's the tail star of the lion. And then Procyon is the little dog star, and up at the top of your screen is Castor and Pollux. Pollux is named there, and the one above it is Castor. Those are the twin stars of Gemini. And then, as I already pointed out to you, you have Orion with the 3 stars making the belt of Orion. The brightest star that I talked about earlier, Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, and as I mentioned to you, Mars is going to be outshining it, and Jupiter is like 15 or 16 times brighter than Sirius. So next, we're going to just take a look at November 24th. This is 8 o'clock, so it's a more user-friendly evening at 8 o'clock, and we're facing south, southeast, southwest, and you can notice Saturn off the right side of your screen. And then we have Jupiter, blazing Jupiter. Saturn is very bright. It's still about magnitude 0.5. Jupiter is a negative 2.8. Remember, Sirius is a negative 1.42. And then we have Mars, which is by the end of the month is going to be a negative 1.8, much brighter than Sirius. And then the next slide shows the line called the ecliptic, which is the pathway of the sun. So you can notice that these planets stay really close to the ecliptic. And even the planet Uranus, which we'll talk about perhaps next month of how you can find it. It is findable with binoculars, but the planets Jupiter, Mars I showed you, and then Saturn, all very close to this line we call the ecliptic. Next, fill in some of the constellation lines that you can see. And so notice that you have Orion over here, the 3 stars in the belt, Al-Natak, Al-Nalam, Mintaka. Notice Betelgeuse, which is reddish in color. The Eye of the Bull, Aldebaran, which is an orangish star, and then the bright planet Mars. And those 3 stars are on the reddish side. Mars is blazing red, it's so bright. And Aldebaran, magnitude 1, orangish red, and Betelgeuse is around a magnitude 0, and that gives you a nice red triangle of things to see up in the sky. And so in terms of some context with some of the artwork, let's look at the next slide, and you can see that we have, I love this constellation, it's called Triangulum. It's the triangle. It's one of the constellations that actually looks exactly like it's supposed to. We have Cetus, the sea monster. You notice Pisces, the fishies here, as they come down, like so, and that's where Jupiter is. Jupiter is officially now in the constellation of Pisces. Mars, we already talked about, is like near the horns of the bull, is where the planet Mars is. And then Saturn is in the end parts of the sea goat, Capricorn, the sea goat. And so great constellations, great stars, great planets to enjoy. And don't forget, don't miss the Leonid meteor shower on whatever nights are convenient for you that it's clear around the 17th or 18th of November. I'm Dave McDonald for The Sky This Month. Hope you enjoyed the show.